Welcome to Media Rebel Unplugged. I'm your host, Janice Becker. Joining me today is Vanessa Hamilton. She is the Executive Vice President of Business Development for Utility Pipeline. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So you're in a pretty male-dominated field, wouldn't you say?
Just a little bit.
Could you give us a little background on how you entered this industry?
So this is going to date me, like really date me. I graduated in 2008 from Kent State, and I was a business management major. And my parents really thought that interviewing was a great experience for everyone. I actually submitted my resume from an ad that I saw in the newspaper. So I interviewed, and 2 weeks later, I got the phone call, and that was my birthday present because I got offered the job. I was in the accounting side of the business to begin with.
So you were initially in accounting, and that's what made you apply.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many women out there who are just like, okay, I'm going to go in the natural gas industry, right?
No. Unless you're maybe like a welder or your family on the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, like that, or a welder, which our industry really needs those skilled trades right now.
I remember those job ads in the newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's how I started right out of high school. I'm going to date myself too. That's how we did it. And you know what? I actually helped my son, who is a senior, on a project he was doing for his language arts class.
Oh.
And they had him create a classified ad that looked like the old school newspaper ad. And I was like, he has no idea what this is.
I know. Well, and funny enough, so utility pipeline has been my only professional job out since I graduated from college.
Wow, you must really like them then.
I've been here for 17 years.
So how was that trajectory for you then? You started in the accounting side of it.
Yeah, I started in accounting, and then at the time, our CFO, who's now our CEO, I worked hand in hand with him and the other accounting staff. So I worked retail while I was going through school. And I mean, you want to talk about putting up with a lot of retail. That and serving. Ooh. So Andy Duckworth, he kind of really mentored me, but he saw that I was so social. And no offense to anyone in accounting, but sometimes they're not the most social individuals.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to shadow the vice president of marketing. And I went and I learned how he did a sales pitch, how he was talking with individuals. And I sat back and just observed everything. And then I started riding around with our COO, Bob Wenzel, who's also one of the founders of our company. And he showed me the systems and how everything works. So I did that for about a year, and I didn't really know why I was doing it. And then Andy walked into my office one day and said, "You're our new marketing coordinator." And they unfortunately let the gentleman go who was running marketing, and I had no idea what to do. I mean, I was like, okay. And it's one of those things, you jump in the water and you swim. I had a lot of friends that were in marketing, and I could bounce ideas off of them, but I really enjoy going out and meeting with customers and helping grow our business. And it is a very male dominated industry, but I am very fortunate. Andy Duckworth is our CEO now, and Bob Wenzel is our COO. Unfortunately, he might be leaving us soon and retiring and enjoying life like we all eventually want to. But they really took me underneath their wing, and they showed me, they weren't just going to let me sink. I'm very lucky to have mentors like that.
I'm really happy to hear that you have that, because we have a lot of women that have been on the podcast in male dominated fields. And I think any woman who has experienced that, you end up seeing both sides of it, right? You have a negative part. You have some men who are still very chauvinistic. And I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. He goes, "That isn't still really happening, is it?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's still happening."
It happens at the gas station.
Yeah, it happens everywhere. So to hear that you had that support, especially from leadership, is rare and just amazing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky. Bob Wenzel was the one who was approached to be on the Ohio Gas Association. And he was like, "I don't live that type of a lifestyle." He rides motorcycles. His son's a pro enduro motorcycle guy. So he's always gone, usually when he's not working. And I got the opportunity to sit on the board and really learn even what some of the bigger utility companies do. And eventually I was asked to be on their executive committee, and I was chairman a few years ago. So that was really, really awesome. And I really encourage anyone, male or female, when you're given an opportunity, don't talk yourself out of it. Give it a shot. Give it a shot and see, and definitely sit back and just be a sponge and try to observe and absorb all the information. Because I was in a room with people who were old enough to be my parent, and eventually they learned to respect me, and they still respect me to this day, and I respect them. And I learned a lot from those individuals.
I think that's really good advice to give people. And it's always a question that we ask here. What advice would you give to somebody going to the field? Which I would love to hear that from you here in a minute. But
Don't wear heels.
yeah, don't wear heels. Always grab a second pair of shoes.
Yes.
But I know imposter syndrome is a real thing. It's another thing that comes up often here, especially when you're new in something, especially if you're a woman in a male dominated field. It can be challenging. I joke, but it's also kind of a serious thing. I even shared this on LinkedIn recently that when I initially started my digital agency, I had a lot of that imposter syndrome. I didn't have clients yet, obviously, because when I left the agency I was at, I couldn't take any of my clients with me. There's an agreement in place there. And so you feel like an imposter. Like, I don't have any clients yet, but yeah, I'm a digital agency. And I had to fall back on my experience and everything that I've done over my career in helping like hundreds of businesses and various industries and all these clients and say, okay, all because I don't have them right now doesn't make me less worthy or capable of what's coming. So
gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's important too. We did not become an expert
on day one.
On day one, no. Like it takes you a long time. So
absolutely.
But yeah, going back to that, what advice do you have for somebody wanting to enter the field that you're in?
Well, the one thing about the energy industry, whether you're on the electric, solar, wind, I'm obviously pro natural gas, is that there's such an endless opportunity for growth. Energy in any sector, we are always going to need it. It is in every single part of what we do. So from a career stability role, the energy industry, especially the natural gas industry in the northeast part of the country, it's not going anywhere. So from that, there's so many different opportunities, but you've got to be open to them. Now, I am not someone who likes to get dirty. So I was never really interested in the field aspect. But even we tell a lot of the people who apply for our scholarship is that there's so many different avenues that you can take, whether it's accounting or marketing or, PR or HR, things like that. But then to be a part of something that, when we build the natural gas infrastructure into a new community and then you drive past it and you know that all of those individuals have stable, reliable heating sources and energy sources, it does make you feel good.
Yeah, that's one thing. We always need to be warm and we need to be able to cook our food. I have gas stove. I couldn't live without.
Right.
So it's definitely a good field to be in. It's just anything energy utility related. Like my son's going in the HVAC industry.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, that's another one that we always need. The average person probably doesn't think about how much we need all of that.
And I've been through a lot of pro-gas, anti-gas, things like that I've seen. But when you break it down, and the organization is called One Eye, it used to be called UGI. We are also not very creative with our acronyms in this industry. One Eye, so their main goal is to educate people on the oil and gas industry. They go to schools, they provide tools for teachers and different avenues to kind of show people how it affects the state of Ohio. And they actually have this really cool poster, and it shows everything that we use in our day-to-day life that's made from oil and gas. From your lipstick to the tires on your car to gasoline. I mean, tool that they use in hospitals, most of them are made from oil byproducts. So it's things like that I think sometimes people don't understand. If you take, we want to be very good to the environment, but if you take something that big out, what do you lose from your common day life? And that's the one thing I think a lot of people don't understand. You want to do everything responsibly 100%. And, we're accountable for our action, but it's just one of those things because sometimes you have to outweigh, the cost of things.
It's like if somebody took away the internet, how everybody would throw a fit.
Oh, yeah.
It would be the same thing with natural gas.
Like we were saying with the newspaper ad. Could you imagine if you didn't have LinkedIn or if you didn't have all the other job sites and things like that people use today and you had to go back to read the newspaper?
No, they wouldn't know what to do. It's just like I heard somebody say it with a map, before we had GPS on our phones.
That's not happening.
My mom always was notorious for being lost. And I have trauma from her being on the side of the road and crying. And I was like, I will be great at directions. So I learned how to read an atlas. Kids Google what an atlas is when I was like 18. And then I remember using that atlas to get to my brother's graduation from the Marines at Camp Lejeune with
That's awesome.
So yeah, again, dating ourselves,
Yeah.
but people don't realize how much things are made from the just common stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions around the natural gas industry. What are some of the biggest ones that you hear?
I hear so a lot of them are that, we obviously destroy the environment. Now, don't get me wrong. We have become more efficient and better with tons of things that we do. There's a learning curve, and this industry's been around for decades. But that's the one thing. That's why we need to get better, and technology is helping us do that. But then there's also a lot of people are like, they're just big oil and gas company. We're strictly distribution and transmission. And I'm like, well, who heats your home? And a lot of people are like, who powers that business right there? Because they don't use electric, they have to use gas for their processing. It's one of those things that I think people don't understand, like we just talked about, when you take something away, you're losing. But that one thing that you need heat, you want to be warm. And that's our number one, people need to run their businesses because they employ people. So it all trickles down. And that's the one thing too that, it costs a lot to build the infrastructure as well. And there's nothing that we can do about that, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I know. I've read a lot about like mining for the lithium batteries that they use in like the Teslas.
yeah.
And think about what is fueling the vehicles that are mining the lithium.
We did have a project a couple years ago that they were doing something with hydrogen, and it was the renewable energy thing again. But they were using a substantial amount of natural gas to heat the water to make hydrogen. And I go, so technically it's natural gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the things. It's just how you market it.
I was gonna say it's just a different label slapped on it. Yeah, exactly.
100%. Yeah. I'm like,
Education is key.
absolutely.
So going back to you being in this male-dominated industry, what's one of the biggest challenges that you've encountered in your career?
So at the beginning of my career, I was fresh out of college. When I transitioned over into the marketing realm, I was only 27, and I was dealing with mostly men and women that were old enough to be my parents, or older. There was a little bit of a, we don't need to involve her in this conversation and things like that. And that's really where my mentor helped, because he kind of forced people to involve me in some of the conversations, especially when we were dealing with contractors and developers and the heads of those projects. So that was a challenge. I had to also develop a bit of a tough skin. And when you're a woman, and some people may not like the next comment coming out of my mouth, but when you're a woman, your looks do add sometimes to your success, and sometimes they also stop you from success because you're discredited sometimes. However, you can also use it to your advantage, because a lot of people were more open to talk to me sometimes because I was a young, attractive girl versus, an older man that may be a little bit more stuffy. The thing is, hold yourself with integrity, and you still demand respect from everyone that you come in contact with. I think you can use that because you're more welcoming. A lot of women are looked at as being welcoming when you're in a room of strangers. And so that, especially in sales and marketing, really does help, because it helps you start conversation. And that's one thing that it was kind of hard at the beginning to understand that. But now I look back and I think I handled it really, really well. And it still helps me to this day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Anytime you walk into a room as a woman with a smile and, can just lower the guard that normally would be up if you were a man. So there are advantages to being a woman. I've encountered issues that none of my male counterparts had encountered. So I had worked somewhere. I was dressed very professionally, and I had these dress shorts on. They were really cute. They actually kind of look like a skirt, and I have very long legs. So I've always been very sensitive to the length of my short or my skirts, or lots of trauma in school of, that's not long enough because my arms are also really long and they touch your knees, and that rule was asked to be 2 inches above your knee. So anyways, yes, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you do when your fingertips touch your knees? Because I have monkey arms. But so I go to work. I'm feeling pretty confident about myself. I had just had my 5th child. So I'm like finally in my pre-baby clothes, and I feel really good. And it takes one person to just take that all away. So I'm sitting there working, and we had all these cubicles. I want to say there were probably 8 to 10 people that were working around me. And I'll never forget him coming out, standing there and looking me up and down. And then he goes, Janice, I'm going to have to ask you to go home and change.
Wow.
I said, really?
Wow.
Why? Because my
Yeah.
ankles are showing?
Right.
What? But have you
Yeah.
ever heard of a man having to go home and change because
No.
he had shorts on?
No.
So it is definitely a different
Yeah.
thing for women to have to encounter.
It is lucky for me that our office is semi-casual. Like all the ladies that work in our customer service department, nobody really truly sees them, like customers, and they're not interacting with people like that. They're just doing it over the phone. And so we allow them dressed in your PJs and your yoga pants and
work comfortably.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to work better if you're comfortable.
Absolutely. Now, for me, I personally feel my best when I'm dressed up, and I just feel more confident about it. If your makeup's done, all that kind of stuff. Do not get me wrong. There are some Mondays I am in yoga pants, but it's just one of those things. I think you have to sometimes read the room. But if someone were to tell me to go home today because of how I was dressed, that conversation would not go well.
Yeah. It was a turning point. Yeah. It was crazy.
Especially when it's not anything to do with like safety, like
Yeah.
steel toe boots or something like that. I understand, but not that. Well, and I think too that this is something that it was actually a man judging another man. We had a senior district manager who actually is no longer with our company. He retired several years ago. And he made a comment about someone that we interviewed, and the gentleman was tattooed. And I mean tattooed everywhere. Now, he was going to perform a skilled labor. His tests were absolutely amazing. But that was the one thing that this district manager made a comment after the interview and after the gentleman left, was that he didn't look professional, and so he didn't necessarily want him working for us. And now I do think that maybe he should have made a better judgment call when it came to his neck, because you can't cover that up. And I know that there's a lot of professions that they accept tattoos, but you have to cover them up. And I have tattoos, but that was the one thing. And I go, why do you care what his arm looks like when he's going to be installing pipe?
Yeah.
And he kind of stepped back and he thought, but that was the old school mentality. And it's a generational thing. And so I think those perceptions, we're never going to get, man or woman, we're never going to get around them.
Yeah, we actually did an episode on that too, about tattoos in the workplace and how that's evolved. I myself have an entire back piece.
Yeah.
And I just went to a chamber event. I wasn't even thinking about it. It's warmer out, so I'm wearing a shirt and it's a little lower in the back and you can see it. And a couple of the professional women that I know are really tattooed. I mean, more so than I am, like sleeved, and they were like, we didn't know you were a tattoo girly. I'm secretive about it, but it's there.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the one thing. I have tattoos as well, and I love them. I have friends that have like full arm sleeves.
Yeah.
And they're awesome, but they can totally rock it.
Yeah.
I don't think I could rock an arm sleeve.
I couldn't either.
But my friend Sam, like it just totally fits her.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just one of the things that men and women, I think we both have those misleading, perceptions of certain things. We did also, by the way, we did offer that gentleman the job, and he got a better offer someplace else. But I hope he's thriving. But that was just one of those things. I was like, you really care about what his right arm looks like?
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's not an offensive tattoo. I mean, what it says about you, like you said, it's more about your character.
Yeah.
Not about your knowledge or your professionalism, all because you have some ink on you.
And I also wanted the gentleman was going to be in full FR gear. I was like,
oh my gosh.
See it anyway. He's not going to go to a chamber event.
Yeah, so not relevant at all. It's crazy how we still carry those biases over, but I'm glad we are starting to get a little bit more comfortable with that and a more professional facing. I mean, I just went to my Infinity dealership and one of their execs is completely tattooed, and I actually took comfort in it. I was like, oh, you're a really cool guy. Like,
those are great icebreakers too.
Yes.
You can ask like, oh, hey, what does that mean? I'm a very social person, and a lot of people joke that I could probably talk to a wall. When you travel sometimes by yourself, you find yourself talking to walls instead of just being on my phone the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, our differences as individuals actually open each other's eyes, I think.
I agree. I'm a very social person too. I've had people tell me something very similar or ask me questions about, have you ever had anybody on your podcast that wasn't very conversational? And Like, it's never been an issue for me. I think just because I naturally speak to people, I have that ability of finding something relatable on any level with any person. And you have to in sales marketing. I mean, I've done that for 22 years. So I know you can relate. Like you learn how to, like you said, read the room and read a person. And that can also, again, open it up for so much more development for your relationship on so many different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I do get sometimes, especially by title, I am on the executive team of Utility Pipeline. And that's something that I see as a great responsibility because I know that there's several individuals that I'm responsible for and they go home to their families. And that I take a huge accountability for that because, especially with the sales team that I lead, the growth of the company, that's our responsibility, which means more people can work for us. More families are a part of the Utility Pipeline family. And I take that very, very seriously. But it's one of those things that some people say, oh, she's so intimidating.
I
And
hear that too.
I'm really good friends with our HR manager, and she's like, "Have you ever talked to Vanessa? Like, have you actually went up and talked to her? She's not intimidating. She might look intimidating, but she's not intimidating." And so she'll come over, and because I don't really pay that much attention to it, and so there is sometimes she'll come over and she's like, "Go say hi to so and so." And so I think that that's one thing too. As any individual moves up the corporate ladder, is just always be aware that sometimes, even though you're not meaning to come off intimidating because you are a very social person,
Yeah.
it's not intentional. That's the one thing too that I've kind of learned because I remember, first starting out and I was like, oh, that's, so and so.
Mhm.
And that was the one thing that for me, just learning that. I mean, they weren't that serious. They're just a person.
Yeah, I always say that too. The title is just a title. We're all
Yeah.
just people at the end of the day. I've often heard the same thing that I can be intimidating for some people. And I think that's just because I think a lot. Like I do digital strategy. So I'm a very strategic
Yeah.
thinker and I'm always in here strategizing something else. So if I look really serious or have what people call an RBF, it's probably because I'm just thinking really hard. It's not personal, I promise.
Well, and that's the one thing because a lot, especially my sales and marketing team, they're like my family. They're like brothers that I never wanted, but I have. Shay, who's on my team, she's our marketing coordinator, and I look at her like a little sister. And several other individuals I've worked with, we're a family. The Blue U is one of our main values, and that basically is that family aspect of the company. It's actually really funny because when they say RBF, they're like, "Oh, she just got Botox. It's fine. It'll wear off in like 6 months." And that's just the kind of like demeanor that we have because
Yeah.
working working so hard and, being on the road and things like that our sales team does, if you can't laugh and you can't enjoy what you do, I mean, it's just not worth doing it. And I hear some of my friends talk about how much they hate their jobs. I've literally never hated my job. Now, I've wanted to pull my hair out and I wanted a really strong shot at tequila a few times, but I have never, ever hated my job. And that's why I think I don't have a job. I have a career. And I think it's one of the things that's helped me be so successful and to be exposed to so many different opportunities in the industry is because I've never hated what I do.
That's amazing. And it's a rarity too. You learn a lot either way, and staying at a company that you've been fortunate to be at for so long is, I mean, I'm sure
Oh,
probably
yeah.
from hearing other stories from people, it's a blessing.
Well, and there has been some times though, to be honest, especially when after I had my daughter when I was 28, and I had been presented a few different opportunities in and around that time. And you still have to evaluate everything and think about, especially when you are bringing a child into this world, like, is this the best decision and blah, 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 the whole big pros and cons you're supposed to do in your head. And people are like, are you happy that you didn't make this choice? Are you happy that you didn't go somewhere else? I'm absolutely happy.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted it, which is, I think, something that's very rare.
Now, are you guys only located in Canton or are you all over?
So our headquarters is in Canton, right in Belden Village, but then we actually are in 5 states. So we have offices in Pennsylvania. We have a small office in Indiana. We serve a system in Lynchburg, Indiana, a beautiful lake community. And then Virginia, West Virginia.
Forgive me for not knowing this. If somebody is going through a distribution company now and you're set up with somebody and I'm not sure I'm getting the best deal possible on my natural gas, is that something that you help with?
So that would be a broker, like an energy choice program.
Gotcha.
Some communities, they go through a broker so that the entire community gets better price for gas. And so they pool it on large, big pools in the transmission pipelines. Now, someone like me, though, you have to actually build the infrastructure. So the housing developments, small communities, things like that, we're actually installing the pipe, tapping the transmission lines or the local distribution companies or producers sometimes, and supplying the gas and building the infrastructure too.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the other utilities like electric, for example, you can go out and you can go online and you can pick which electric broker you want.
Yeah, so it's like apples to
apples to apples. That's what the PUCO calls it. So
yeah.
It's different in every state, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the difference between what we do as a distribution company and then what the brokers do, like an IGS, which I know that's a big name around here.
Yeah. So what's like your target person then, that your target audience?
So for us would be, we love residentials, that's the bread and butter of what we do. Agricultural businesses, typically they're a little further out of the city, obviously. And so with our company model, we're able to extend to those end users, especially when they use during off-peak season. So like grain dryers, no one's really using their natural gas heat unless they have a pool in the summer and then, the early fall or in the spring. So for us, they use it when it's not peak load. And then also we have huge manufacturing and industrial customers as well. So basically anybody who uses gas is my target.
All right. That's good. That's a lot of people. So where can people learn more about your company?
So utilitypipelineltd.com is our website. And you can also Google, we have several different utilities and co-ops. So we own the regulated utilities and we manage the natural gas co-ops, do all their billing, installation, all that fun stuff. But you can Google either Knox Energy Cooperative, Madison Energy Cooperative, or Village Energy Cooperative. Those are the cooperatives that we operate in the state of Ohio. And then we have K&G Energy, which is in Northwest Ohio. Pike Natural Gas is in Southern Ohio. And also we have Eastern Natural Gas, which is in Northeast Ohio.
Wow, so you guys are everywhere.
Yes.
You're covered.
Yes, that is the hardest thing, though, about working at Utility Pipeline is when you first come in, you have to understand all the entities and how they fit together.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's, it's kind of like when people were learning digital marketing and you're trying to learn all the acronyms and terminology. And I don't even realize I used like I used a technical term the other day. And somebody stopped me and they were like, I'm sorry, what does that mean? And I was like, I am really sorry. I was trying to talk, the normal language if possible.
With a lot of our field guys, sometimes they'll be talking about stuff like that. And I'm like, are you talking about an eye chart? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, can I have a dictionary, please?
Yeah, exactly.
So we always ask, and this is the last question I have for you today. What gets you through your day?
I have a blue-eyed, almost 12-year-old daughter who gets me through every single day. Everything I do is for her. And she is a spitting image of me. We have the same personality, which is why we fight all the time. But she is my best friend. That and knowing that the people that work for Utility Pipeline get to go home to things like that too.
That's great. I can relate to that with my daughter.
And I do work out. I have a personal trainer at the warehouse, and Mike's been with me for 9 years. And seen the ups and downs, saw me post-baby, through the divorce, all that kind of stuff. And there's a meme that I saw, and it's a girl lifting, and there's a little girl right next to her. And she said, never forget who you do it for.
That's a very good meme. I know, as a single mom, I can relate to that because it's like, she's watching me build this company. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and then being somewhere completely new and foreign to us and saying, you know what, I'm just going to go all in and believe in myself. And I think that's really powerful whenever you can do that, no matter what it is. So,
and then the one thing, when they realize it, you're just going to melt.
Yeah.
That is the one thing, though, because I always say she's 11 going on 13, but I just know she's going to be better than what I could ever aspire to be.
That's great. It's because she has a great mom.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on today with me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to talk to you and hear about your journey. And I'm sure many other women are going to be able to relate to that as well. So
yeah, no, I love what you guys are doing. This is great.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. Thank you all for listening today. We hope that you've enjoyed it and that you'll learn more about Vanessa. I'm going to have information about her and the company in the description. So feel free to click and learn more about her, as well as if you're interested in being a guest or if you know somebody, we have a form for that. And we hope you've liked and subscribed, and we will see you next time.